Young Ning sending off a traveler to Shu. Yanghe Pass is far away, haunting dreams and mind. The traveler's road home winds through Mount Liang. Tomorrow morning, on horse, whip in hand, you will go. In autumn rain, sophora flowers fill Ziwu Pass. So we continue with Tang Poems and Poets. This one, like the last take we did, is a parting poem, which is a very common genre. Scholar official is leaving for the provinces, and he has like this farewell party in the outskirts of the imperial capital Chang'an, or sometimes Luoyang. And it's very typical in this occasion to, drink wine and share poems and greetings, well wishes. Separation for service in the provinces in this period in Tang Dynasty China sometimes could mean separation forever. I mean, death was relatively easy, the provinces were relatively big. Anyway, this is a poem. Let's start with some biography. This is a poem by Yang Ning, who lived approximately in the second half of the 8th century, very early years of the 9th, so he is a mid-Tang poet. He, like other Tang poets, he had a scholar official career, mostly in the service of military commissioners, especially Dongjing in the provinces. Didn't occupy many important posts at court. But he is famous. He and his brothers are famous, the Sang Yang, the three Yang, because they all passed the examinations. So his elder brother, Yang Ping, achieved the highest rank in the list of Jinshi graduates in 774. Yang Ning did exactly the same thing in 777. Their younger brother, Yang Ling, also passed the examinations in 778. Yeah, you've got to remember that Tang examinations were extremely hard. Like they had a ridiculously low passing rate, and having three people from the same family, three brothers, passing the examinations is quite a feat. Anyway, Yang Ning today is probably not known a lot as a poet, I suspect. He did write some collections of poetry, a 20-volume anthology, it seems, that got lost. And today we only have 29 poems from him. And he's better known as the father-in-law of Liu Zongyuan. Liu Zongyuan was included, if you remember, in the 300 Tang Poems anthology. He's quite a decent poet, but his reputation rests probably on being, with Han Yu, the best prose writer of the Tang dynasty. Okay, so with this introduction out of the way, let's move on to Yang Ning's Sending Off a Traveler to Sichuan. Couple of things to say before we start the poem. So it's a typical parting poem, melancholy, sadness. From the title, we know that the unnamed friend who is leaving for the provinces is going to Shu, modern-day Sichuan, the Four Rivers. This is a province that is in the west of China, a landlocked area with a big basin centered on the city of Chengdu. It was a relatively prosperous area, but it was quite out of the way in the Tang, and I imagine today as well. Especially in the Tang, it was famous for how difficult it was to get there. Like, the area of Shu is not super far away on the map from the capital area, Guangzhong, the land within the passes. But the road to Shu was famously hard, as Li Bai's poem in the 300 Tang Poems anthology quotes it. And it's in that title in that poem is a rehash of balladry traditions of poems, also titled "The Road to Shu is Hard." Shu was like surrounded by mountains and mountain passes, and deep ravines, rivers, gullies. The roads were sometimes, very narrow and like wooden planks just fixated to the sides of mountains. and mountains going really, really high, and mountain passes that are easily defensible. That's one of the reasons why, after the Anlushan rebellion, Emperor Tang Xuanzong fled into that area, because it was relatively easy to defend and to turn into a last redoubt of resistance. One characteristic of this poem, which is unusual, is the way the poem depicts the journey backwards, as it were. Like what typically happens in these poems, and I think this happened in the previous one by Jiang Jujuan, is you start at the capital, at the outskirts. You've got maybe some description of the farewell party, the interchange of words and verse, and then you get the poetic persona imagining the traveler through different steps of his journey as he gets further and further away from the capital and closer to his destination. But this poem actually starts at in the reverse order. So it starts at Yanghe Pass. Yanghe Pass is like the doorway to Shu. It's like a mountain pass, very well protected, and it's the entrance, the official entrance to Shu. In fact, I think Tang Xuanzong has a poem in which he describes the pass, and also in Li Bai's The Road to Shu is Hard, Yanghe Pass is described in some detail. So, like the first line of the poem locates us, at least mentally, already at the entrance of Shu. Then the second line references Mount Liang, which is like a halfway place between Shu and the capital. And the next line, the third line, describes the poet's friend, as about to travel. And the fourth line is the Ziwu Pass, which is pretty close to the capital, Chang'an itself. In fact, it would have been the first gateway to the south of Chang'an for a traveler going on the road to Shu. So this is quite an ingenious inversion of the tropes and of the progress that you would expect. Okay, let's go to the poem, couplet by couplet as usual. This is a heptasyllabic quatrain, so each line is pretty long. First couplet, Yanghe Pass is far away, haunting dreams and mind. The traveler's road home winds through Mount Liang. So the first couplet depicts two landmarks on the way to Shu, which is, as I said, where the anonymous friend of Yang Ning is traveling to. First image is of the Yanghe Pass, which, as we said, would have been, a really famous landmark, metonymizing for the whole land of Shu. And it's like so far away and so mythical, legendary, that the first line depicts it as, haunting dreams and the mind, as some almost supernatural, mythical, far away place where the poet is going in his mind's eye and where his friend is going, but is still about to start the journey. And from the pass, we get now in the second line the road that connects the pass and Shu to the capital itself, which is the traveler's road home, and it winds through Mount Liang. So we get another landscape feature. The first was Yanghe Pass, and the second is Mount Liang. So the road is going through it. This is like almost a mathematical formulation. You've got 2 points, Chang'an, which is not mentioned, but is where at the time of the composition of the poem, the poetic persona and his friend are. The other point is Yanghe Pass, and then you've got the line, which is obviously not a straight line through this mountainous landscape, but you've got a line which includes along the way 1 point, a midpoint perhaps, or a quasi-midpoint in Mount Liang. So the first couplet has basically depicted absent landscapes that will be traveled by the poet's friend. But we haven't gotten an image of the poet himself yet, which we won't get in all the poem, or of the traveler until now. Second couplet is in the third line, the traveler is phantasmagorically introduced. Yeah, silhouetted against this background landscape that the first couplet depicted, towards which he is heading. So, second couplet: tomorrow morning, on horse, whip in hand, you will go. In autumn rain, sophora flowers fill Ziwu Pass. So, like the third line moves us from the landscape to the friend and to the present, which is not exactly the time of parting, it's probably the party the night before of the parting. So, like the poetic persona directly says, tomorrow morning, not now, you will part on horse, whip in hand. Yeah, so the traveler now appends, juxtaposes himself to the landscape that was described in the first couplet. And finally, the last line: in autumn rain, sophora flowers fill Ziwu Pass. So we got the landscape, we've got the protagonist. Now we got the time, but now we also get the season. In this line, it's autumn, which is almost hackneyed and stereotypically to be expected. Autumn is the saddest season in traditional Chinese poetry. It's the season of decline, of the leaves falling. It generally functions as a wide metaphor for aging, death, and decay. Although not as brutish and harsh as winter, it's still on the way too. So obviously we are in autumn. Obviously it is raining, or the poet is conceiving of a scene of autumn, which is the season also in the capital, but of raining, falling on the pass. Rain also associated with sadness. It's like the tears of the sky. And in autumn rain, the sophora flowers fill the Ziwu Pass. So remember that in Chinese poetry, there's this traditional Chinese poetry, there's this correlation, sympathetic correlation between nature and the individual, the macrocosm and the microcosm. There's this idea that is really explored in poetry of the pathetic fallacy, much more than in Western poetry, which is connected with traditional Chinese beliefs of the Taoist persuasion, but also Confucian, that nature responds to human emotion. So it's fitting that the poet's friend and the poet, who are feeling sad at parting, should have as a backdrop a rainy autumn, which also conveys images of sadness, of melancholy. It's autumn rain and sophora flowers fill the Ziwu Pass. So again, Ziwu Pass is the last landmark that is mentioned in the poem, meant to join Jiangge Pass and Mount Liang. It's the closest to the capital, and it's imagined full of sophora flowers. Why sophora flowers? Well, sophora flowers probably because, according to Ji Wang and William H. Nienhauser, who translate and comment the poem, sophora flowers are associated with the imperial examinations. So the reference might imply that the traveler has failed the examinations, and the Tang had a first examination, I think, in spring or the summer, and then in autumn they had a second one, so that a supplementary examination in early autumn, so that the ones who had failed the previous one could take a second shot. And early autumn is the time when the sophora flowers bloom. And there's this old saying, popular in Tang times: as sophora flowers turn yellow, the examination candidates are busy. So seen in this light, this image is not just one of some beautiful flower that the traveler might see when the following day or in a couple of days he reaches this mountain pass, the Ziwu Pass. It's also probably a way of transmitting, of conveying the poet's sympathy for the traveler's possible failure in the examination. But, because it's a catch-up examination, it might also convey a hope that in some future yet to be determined, the friend that is parting for Shu will return and pass the examinations. So that's all for today. An interesting backwards take on a very, very common type of poem by the scholar officials.